Okay, we're still on page like 102 or something, talking about the reason why we're doing what we're doing. And this is kind of important, so let it kind of sink in. I don't know anything about the device you're going to be installing this thing on. It could be huge, it could be small, it could be completely square, it could be, a rectangle that you can turn. And so therefore, it's best for me not to say specifically where things go. It's best to tell the machine, I need a button, and I'd like it to be over here, but I'll let you figure out exactly where to put it, okay? Where you defer this to the machine to help out. Okay, on page 102, they talk about this concept of material design. Basically, we're talking about layers of material. I mean, like if you were, trying to build a dress or something, you'd have this particular material and you'd lay another piece of material on top of it and say, yeah, these two look good. That's kind of what we're doing. So material design covers lots of things. This is a philosophical discussion. It has principles, it has rules, it has guidelines, okay? Well, in us, the backbone of our designs is what's called a layout. So a layout is basically how the thing's going to start. Now, I mentioned that we had constraint layouts. Great. Not the best choice. From all of the applications that we're going to do to turn in, okay, every single one of them is going to start with a linear layout. I'm just telling you up front, okay? That's how it's going to happen. And often these things are nested. We have a layout inside a layout, inside a layout, inside a layout. So nesting is not only a good idea, it's dang near required. Because often, for example, I want to have a vertical listing of labels and text boxes, okay? Well, the label and text box is a horizontal layout. But I want those horizontal layouts nested. So I'd have one vertical layout with lots of little nested layouts in it, so that all these things line up. Okay, that kind of sort of makes sense. We're going to do a demo of this in just a minute. Okay, so in our application, let's talk about how you change a layout. So I'm going to go here to my main activity, and typically what you would do in a main activity is this thing called set content view, okay? This is how you change what layout you're running on. So for example, in this particular case, we're going to have a button that's going to change the layout. Remember all that? Okay. So after we've done this, we're going to run set content view a second time to change the layout. So that's the technique you use for changing a layout from one to another. Okay. So we're going to start with what they have in the book on page 103. So start with creating a new project. All right, cool. So here we go. So file, close off this project. Oh yeah, sure, please. That's not what I wanted. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to do create. This time I'm going to ask for just an empty project. Those are so much easier to deal with. And I'm going to call mine Chapter 4. That's not exactly what they call it. They call it something like Exploring Layouts, but I'm not quite that imaginative. Okay, so this is Chapter 4. Okay, so give it a second for it to do its thing. Cool. Okay, so there's our set content guy, and it's pointing to a particular layout called Activity Main. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new layout to this guy, okay? Now, I tend to drill down to the location where the layouts go, although that's not exactly required, okay? And do a right click and then say new, okay? So you don't actually have to, you could do it way up here. I'm just saying that that's just not the way I do it. I typically go there to the location where layouts belong, and then I hit new, and then I want a layout resource file. Okay, now it's going to ask me for the name, so I'm kind of sort of following what they have in the book, and they call theirs main_menu. Okay, now see where this is the root element? This, and it says blah, 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 blah. I want to change that. I'm going to change that root element to what's called a linear layout. Okay? So I'm going to go here and just wipe that out and just start typing. And it finds it really quickly. So linear layout. Okay, so now I have main, and then I've got linear layout as my type. It figured out where it belonged. I didn't actually have to go there. It figured it out. I'm going to ignore all these things. And then I'm going to hit the OK button. And there it producing. Let's go look at it to make sure it did what it was supposed to do. I'm going to switch over to the code view. And so, yes, I've got a linear layout. That looks good. And the orientation is vertical, which is kind of sort of what we want. If it wasn't, we would have done something. And then there's one called layout width and layout height. Now, match parent is a thing in this case, since this is the very top level layout, we're going to have other layouts inside it. The top level layout, match parent, means match the device. Okay, that makes sense? Now later on, when we say match parent, the parent will be whatever the size of the previous guy is, right? So it does exactly like it sounds. So in the first one, match parent means match the physical size. Of subsequent ones on the underneath here are going to be match whatever the previous guy says. So kind of sort of makes sense, I hope. Okay, cool. So we're going to add a text view. Now we're going to do this from the designer. So I'm just going to grab this guy. And I'm going to go to the text view. You could click on the palette guy, not that it matters, and grab a text view. But since it's in the common, I'm just going to drag and drop. Now, because we're not in the constraint view, we're in the linear view, I can drop this anywhere I want. I'm dropping way over here in the corner. Doink! And it automatically goes to the top. Why? Because we're using a linear view that basically says, look, I know you want a text view, but let me take care of where it belongs. You don't have to tell me where it belongs because I don't know the size of the machine you're talking to. Okay, cool. That kind of makes sense. So the exact location where you drop this thing. But I want to change some attributes associated with this thing. Now, when changing attributes, you got to make sure you have it selected. Now, my screen is pretty doggone small, so I typically I pick my thing that I'm dealing with off this component tree. It's just easier for me to do. I'm not saying you have to do that. Maybe if you have a gargantuan screen, it'd be very easy for you to click on that one tiny thing. I find it difficult, so I just use the component view. So now I know I've got the text view selected, and I'm going to go over and hit the attributes tab. Okay, cool. Now, I need to scroll down until we find the text attribute. Now, this thing called declared attributes, this is the one no, these are the changes. Declared attributes means things that you, the programmer, have changed. Because there's a huge list of things in here, okay? See, normally you'd have to go down and just scroll through this like in alphabetical order, okay? And just go through it and find the one that, thankfully it's in alphabetical order. Find the one that's all called text, okay? But since that's a very common one, it's up here. So I'm going to change the text attribute, kind of sort of following what they have in the book. And they say, make this thing say menu. Okay, great. So I'm going to do menu. Cool. And then the other thing they say to do is we're going to decorate how big this thing is. We're going to change its size to 50. So I need something called text size. Ooh, but that one's not on the list, so I'm definitely going to have to scroll down and find the one in the T's. And the text size. Now, I'm going to change it to 50, okay, which is not really on the list. But notice how the text size uses a unit of measure called SP. We're definitely going to be talking about that again, but for now, SP means scalable pixels, or scalable points rather. Font sizes from the beginning of time have been described by how wide they are and how tall they are. It's a little confusing, so I'm not going to get into too much detail. But basically, I want this thing big. So I'm going to type in 50 SP as my units. Okay, cool. Now, right off the bat, you can see this guy is big now. Cool? But notice how the menu, the text inside my text box, is bang up against the margin here. I mean, I can see that from, oh, oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to go to the design view. I mean, there. You can see how the word menu is, I mean, it did what I want to do, but let's say I want it to be centered in there. So there's a thing called gravity. Now, there's two different types of gravity. Gravity inside the object, right, would change the location of the text. If I applied gravity to the object, well, then that would change the location where the thing is. So that's a little confusing, but I promise we'll come back to that. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to the attributes and find something called gravity. And don't get confused. There's one called layout gravity, and I don't want layout gravity. I just want normal gravity. So remember the things that we add, right? The things we add show up here. Cool. So I'm just going to scroll on down until I find G for gravity. And for the gravity guy, I could type, but there's this cool... Anytime you see the little flag guy, that means, hey, I can do some stuff for you, okay? So I want, how about centered horizontally? Okay? That kind of makes sense? Boink! And you can already see, I don't even have to close the guy, that the word menu now is centered inside that text view. So text view is like a label. Typically, users can't like click on it and change the text. It's not like a text box. It's just a label. Except this case, you know, there. We have this thing, cool. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a multi-line text view. Ooh. So, a multi-line guy. So, I need to go to text and find something that says multi-line. So, multi-line text, okay? So, that wasn't one of the common ones, cool? It's multi-line. Okay, so I grab this guy. And again, doesn't matter where I drop him because he's going to immediately snap right underneath the guy because I told it I wanted a linear view. Okay, that kind of makes sense? All right. And then, I tell you what, I am not going to follow absolutely everything in the book here. But one of the things they want to do is they want to add a couple of more things. Hang on just a second. Okay, rather than typing all this stuff by hand, I'm going to go ahead and go to Attributes, making sure I've got this guy selected. Attributes. I'm going to go up to basically the text guy, which doesn't show up. Fine. The text guy, instead of typing a bunch of stuff I don't particularly like, I'm gonna copy and paste since I don't like typing while I'm doing a class. Anyway, I'm just going to do a control paste here to let this thing do its thing. So now it kind of sort of looks like that, which is what the book has. Cool. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some more layout. Now this sounds a little weird. We already have a vertical layout. And what I want to do now is I want to add a horizontal layout so I can put basically a label and a button side by side. That's the goal here. So I'm going to go, instead of, we already have a major layout, so we're not talking about going over here. We're talking about going over here to this layout guy. And so now I have a choice between a horizontal and a vertical one. Well, I want a linear layout, right? But I want it to be side by side, because if you look at the book, they have, you know, a label and then they have a button. That kind of makes sense. So once again, it doesn't matter where I drop this guy. I'm going to drop him somewhere down at the bottom, and boom. Now, he consumed all of the space. Now, we're going to fix that, okay, in just a second, because all I want to do is consume the contents, but I don't have any contents. So we're going to put some contents in there, and then we're going to go back and tweak this guy. But, as usual, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so we'll have to just do that the next time.